Well, hello and welcome to the Profit Express. I am Tim Healy, and I'm inviting you to join me each and every week so together we can win the battle for business. Now, if you're me, you're a small business owner and a sales professional, you are no doubt starting to see your calendar fill up with golf outings, networking events, fundraisers, charity events. And I'm not talking about the virtual kind. No, I'm talking about the in-person kind. Thank God it has come back. We're going face to face, which for everybody is great news. And it is sorely overdue. So I know if you're like me, you can't wait to get back out there belly to belly, face to face with some human beings again. However, as much as we will enjoy it and as much as we need it and as much as face-to-face is a great way to promote the brand and to build and promote your relationships. Now that we are entering into a post-pandemic economy and way of doing business, there are a few things that will not go back to the way they were pre-pandemic. And what's happened, especially in the B2B world, what corporate America has seen is just how efficient, how cost-effective virtual conferencing is. I've seen it myself with my business. Profitability is up, which is great. So what we're going to be most likely going back to is a hybrid way of doing business. And because corporate America has seen how cost-effective it is, I know, and I'm sure you know and you've experienced, that corporate trainings will most likely be, if not 100%, at least a majority of the times, done virtually, done on Zoom. Corporate outings, corporate events, sales training, the sales process will be in some capacity, whether it's 100% or some percentage, done virtually. So here's the thing, and this is what I want to talk about today. Today I want to talk about best practices, because we as sales professionals, as business owners, have to adapt. Because like I said, it's not going back to how it was pre-pandemic. And not only is it going to be virtual conferencing, but because of that, video has really been put on our forefront. And I know a lot of us have been dragging our feet with video for far too long. And that's why today's guest is a special guest, because if you're a fan of the show, you know him. He's been a long time contributor. And I'm also very happy to say he's also a sponsor of the podcast now. He's the one, the only Bill Corbett, Corbett Public Relations. And he's been championing the cause of video for many years. And now that we have virtual meetings as a part of the mix, we're going to talk about best practices. And so it's a real pleasure to have back on board the Profit Express, Mr. Bill Corbett. How are you today?
I'm doing awesome, Tim. It's a great intro and good to be back. I don't think I've been on with you for about a year. So.
Well, yeah, the show, as you know, had a COVID-induced hiatus, unfortunately. But we're back. We're better than ever. Listen, we're on a lot more platforms now, which is great. We're recording on StreamYard, it's on YouTube. We're all over the place. And listen, it's great to have you on board as a sponsor too. You've been a longtime friend and supporter of the show, which is great. So thank you for that.
No, podcasts are where it's at, and I listen to yours and others as I'm walking around. I call it Dog Walk University. I walk myself as I'm walking the dog in the morning, and it's great and good. And I look for good information and good content. So
well,
chatting.
Well, thank you. Oh, and also before we get into best practices, let me just show off. We have the official Profit Express mug. I have to get you one in the mail.
Absolutely.
I'm very excited.
This Contigo thing isn't going to work. So.
Yeah, and there is a guarantee your coffee will taste 92% better drinking out of the Profit Express mug. So you have that to look forward to.
Awesome.
So, listen, I think we can all realize that business won't go back to the way it was pre-pandemic. There will be some hybrid version. And I know I've seen the effectiveness, the cost effectiveness, the time savings of virtual conferencing. And a big part of that obviously is video. And again, I have to give you credit, Bill. You've been talking about video on the show for years. You've been a champion of it. You know, a couple of years ago, you said if you weren't on board with video, you were already a couple of years behind. So kudos to you on that. I really have to applaud you on that. So let's help out the listener let's prepare them post-pandemic to be prepared to be the best they can on virtual, on video, in the promotion of their brand. So what I'd like to start off with, Bill, because you, like me and so many others, have probably been on countless Zoom meetings and presentations.
Zoom fatigue.
Yes, we all do.
Right.
Share with me.
I don't really,
What's that?
I don't really have Zoom fatigue. It's just you have to reboot yourself every once in a while and get back into the purpose and why you're doing these interactions with people. And you have to be deliberate in what you do and why you do it, and do it well, or don't do it at all. Right?
Right.
If you're not going to be an excellent podcast host or an excellent salesperson, then you should look for a different profession. So, but there's a lot of people who struggle with it.
Well, you brought up a great point already, and the fact that I think it's safe to say we all did have a level of fatigue with it because we weren't used to doing it so often. But we just have to kind of take a step back and kind of recalibrate and just embrace the tool that is going to be going forward. But what I love to start off with, because it'll be educational and entertaining. What have been some of the worst blunders that you've observed on your many Zoom meetings since the pandemic broke?
Well, there's one that wasn't one of mine, but it was one that I learned about and I saw, and I actually have some of the video that I saved that I use when I do presentations. But there was a woman who was part of about a 12-person Zoom meeting early on in the pandemic. She's using her phone, right? She has her phone and she takes it with her to the bathroom. When she goes to the bathroom, she's still on the call. She didn't put it on pause. She didn't turn the camera off, and she puts it down and you get this, it's not graphic. I mean, she sits down and does her business, but she's still on the call, right? So people, they forget, or they didn't hit the button, or they continue to record, and you hear these stories about people who take a live microphone, into a bathroom in places. Well, that can happen to anybody, right? So that's one like really egregious situation. And everybody, when she came back and sat down, everybody was just laughing there and like covering their mouths, and really created a weird, awkward situation. So that's one. But then another very common thing is the camera angle. Like my camera is about a little bit over my eye level, which is a tip. I'm looking in the camera. I got screens around, so I'm a little distracted, but I do my best to concentrate on the camera.
Sure.
But other people have it here where it's low and looking up your nose. I don't want to see someone's, if they forgot to blow their nose or whatever's going on there. So you want to present the right image, with the right angle, with the right light. And that's really bad. And then the light from behind, the blowout from behind. People sit there in front of a window, and you can't see can't see them. They just look like a silhouette. Like it's one of those, investigative reports where the person doesn't want to give their name. They want to stay incognito or anonymous. So it's bad, and it doesn't present. There's a lot of reasons why it's bad. One is you just don't see the person. And if you don't see the person, you're not going to pay attention to the person. But it's bad for your brand. What if you're at like a networking thing or a business development situation, and then you just don't look good, and people don't want to work with people that just don't look good? I'm not talking about what their personal looks are. If they just don't present well. That's if they don't care about how they look, why should you care about them? I don't.
It's again, these are great points because we all grew up in business. You and I have done a ton of networking over the years, and you're used to when you go to an event, you probably, you look at yourself in your mirror in the car, right? How's my tie look? Do I have anything in my teeth? Or when you're in the men's room, you check yourself out. It's all about appearance. Right. But it just seems that for some reason, when somebody turns on the camera or the phone for the Zoom meeting, they don't realize that this camera is now it's in their home, it's in the bedroom, the den, or not that it surprises me, but that woman taking the phone into the bathroom. I mean, it's I don't have words for it.
We talked, and you've had a lot of great guests on this podcast and radio show, about people who are successful business people, and successful business people are deliberate. They have plans. They plan
Yes.
things out. They think about what they're going to do. They we can get into this about language to use and things like that to engage with people. But it's not a willy-nilly thing. You don't just turn your camera on and think, oh God, let's have a meeting. I don't do meetings without agendas. I don't do meetings that I didn't plan for. I don't do meetings that there isn't a purpose to them. If you want to have a happy hour, people and their buddies and friends, that's fine. But that's not the same thing. If you're using it for any kind of business purpose, you should be projecting the right message and be prepared for what you're getting yourself into. And if you're not prepared, don't do it.
Well, even the use of a plan is a critical word. So, I mean, I think we could all forgive people that, a year ago when this all first started, March, April, May, people weren't used to Zoom. They weren't used to the virtual, so they were all making mistakes. I think we could forgive that. But now we are 14 months later. I don't think there's a tolerance. I don't think there should be a tolerance.
No, it's a business practice. And some people are like, oh, we can keep my camera off and other things. And that's actually, we can get into the cultural discussion about business and culture. And if you're working with people, you should see the people you work with. Don't have your cameras off. But also, if you're going to have a meeting, don't be wearing your pajamas. If you're supposed to be working from home, don't wear your pajamas, or don't wear, comb your hair, take a shower, get ready, go right, do the things you normally would do to be presentable to people. And that goes a long way. A lot of the way we communicate, I'm using my hands a little bit, using facial gestures. I'm looking at the camera.
Right.
We get a lot of information and communicate with people through our body language, through the tone of voice and the way we speak, not just the words that we use. And it all comes together in a way that allows people to trust each other, to build relationships with each other. It's all interconnected.
You bring up a very interesting point that, to me, I've been frustrated by when a participant in a video conference, in a Zoom call, chooses to black out the screen. So you talk about, I mean, what's your? I mean, it annoys me. It just,
Right.
I have to have that face to face. So what are your thoughts on that? What have you heard people's? Why do they do it? I mean,
Well, they do it because they're not engaged, right? Or they're trying to hide something, or they were lazy and they weren't prepared for the things. I know I'll pick on people because I'm not. You give them a lot more benefit of the doubt, Tim, than I do. I think people are lazy. A lot of people are just lazy.
Right.
It's not that they're not familiar with the technology. They're not prepared. They don't invest the time and the effort that they really need to invest. And granted, I've participated in a lot of really wasteful time meetings. I don't like long meetings. I like, anytime someone says to me, you can have a meeting that's an hour, I say, no, it can be a half hour with 5 minutes extra if we need it. And almost every single time you can cut a meeting in half, almost every time. Right?
Yep.
A podcast, though, you can always stretch it out, make it an hour. No.
Right.
But so you have to think about that. And if you're the host of the meeting, you got to figure out ways to make it engaging. And there should be some rules. The rules should be you don't turn your camera off. Granted, if you're going to get up for a second, go to the bathroom and do whatever you're going to do,
Sure.
or your wife pops in to tell you something, or the dog jumps on your lap, whatever, you can turn it off for a second. But it should be more of like the pause button for a moment, and then you come back in and engage, because everybody gets greater value. And the host, depending on the host, if it's a boss or a leader, they should be seeing you. There should be rules, depending on the situation. In my book.
So you think it's okay to kind of set the table that when you're doing an invite, having these reminders of, having the screen on, not just, your name in a black box. Nothing wrong with that.
Sometimes I'll do a Zoom, but it's really just a call, because Zoom is really a good tool for just doing a conference call.
Sure.
Yeah. And it doesn't tie up my phone line. It's through the computer. So you can use these different tools in different ways. But I like to talk to people about how to maximize it so that you look good and it benefits you instead of hurts you in the long run.
So now this is interesting. So here you are in your virtual studio. You have a blue background. I've got a black background.
Right. It's green screen on the other side. These things are not expensive. You can get one that goes on the back of your chair.
Right.
I'm going to get a big curtain, and I'm redoing my whole home office because it's my office now.
Sure, sure. So let me ask you this. So we've seen like even major broadcasts have had their talent, like ESPN has had their talent at home, and then you can see, the bookcase in the back. You can see whatever. So let me ask you this then: what would be your advice? So somebody has certain props in the background. Certain props have certain messages. I was actually on a video conference not too long ago where there was, and I'm not going to go political, but there was a political message. And
Yep.
and I know you could very well, especially because we're in politics right now is very heated. You're going to alienate half of the potential audience. So what would be some general props or what I'm saying that we should avoid?
Let's look at it in the context of the good, the bad, the ugly, right?
Okay,
So
I like that.
The good. Okay, so there's good things. Like say I like the Islanders, or say I like football. You like the Jets. I have some signed footballs, and I got some jerseys, and and if that's part of who you are and what you're about, and you want to put some of that paraphernalia and that stuff out there, and those trinkets and things, I think that's awesome, because when you're getting to meet people and they see your background, then that's something that's a talking point. You can chat about it, and I think that's a good thing. I was just on with someone yesterday. I used to work for the Broncos, and she had like 15 different signed footballs behind her. I thought that was very cool. Very cool. Like, I'll take the John Elway football. Come on. So that's cool. But then you're right. That's the good. Now, the bad is really having a disheveled look, having junk all over the place. I had one, you can see the wires hanging out of his ceiling and stain marks on his ceiling. It was disgusting. So that's bad. But it's okay. It's bad. It's just the guy's house, and that's the environment that he chooses to live in, filth and horror. But and that's the good, the bad, and the really ugly though, or the thing you should be concerned about is like the message. Is there something that someone could take away from what's behind you? Like I know you could have like a rebel flag or something that's like totally not acceptable anymore.
Sure.
But maybe someone's a history buff and had it, whatever the reason, or just some sign or whatever, like you said. So you want to be cognizant of that, because you don't want to offend people. But also, though, if it's part of who you are and what you're about, if you're a Republican or Democrat and you're into these causes, and that's who you are, and that's your audience you're talking to, that's okay. But you have to think about, you have to think, basically. And a lot of people just don't think. I mean, a picture of your family, great, but do you want to have a liquor bottle there? Do you want to have something else that may, to some people, like, oh, this guy has a drinking problem. He's got his five bottles of whiskey behind him. Maybe it's more than just a hobby, So you have to think about what people the perception is reality, as they say in public relations, So what is the image and perception that you're there to present? I would err on the side of caution and put things that, that are not confrontational and part of your personality or your experience, your business experience.
Well, it's a good way to help people think about how they're being perceived. I think it's good to have some of your personality out there. You don't want to be distracting. But then you have to know your audience. Like you said, if you're talking to a conservative audience, that's one thing. If you're talking to a liberal audience, okay, great. But if it's a business audience, which typically is mixed, you have to be aware of that. So now let's talk about it. We focused on the video conferencing aspect. Let's talk about video, because obviously, of course, video is a part of it. But now video also, as you and I have spoken about many times over the years, is becoming completely dominant as far as a tool in how we brand ourselves. And I've learned a lot from you the past few years, because I kind of dragged my heels when it comes to video. And so much of the content that we put out there now on LinkedIn, on Facebook, on Instagram is video. How important is it? Can the small business owner, can the salesperson not be a part of it at this point? I mean, can we just draw a line in the sand?
No, I don't think so. And there's I mean, there's people who are like shy and just don't want to be part of video, or
Right.
video beyond the Zoom video where they're interacting with someone. And I get that. And if you don't want to be the face of the company, that's fine. But that doesn't mean that you have to use your face, as the content. You can be,
Okay.
if you're a sales coach, you can use other kinds of other content. My clients do technology, and they're involved with railroads and aircraft and other things like that. So there's a lot of images and video that can be taken, and voiceovers can be done, and other mechanisms or other content can be created and used on video if you personally don't feel comfortable being on. But
Good point then. Yeah.
but I also think, though, that if we have recognized, as you state, that this is part of the reality. I don't want to use new normal because it's really was the normal before now.
Right.
Is most people in business need to have some level of skill in the video communication world to express who they are themselves and what they're interested in life and business. And they should think about how to project that. Like, I remember back when I was in high school and in college, I took public speaking classes, right?
Mm-hmm.
I knew that at some point in my life I'd have to talk in front of people, right? So that was a tool that or class that I knew I would use, and I would hope that they would probably start implementing public speaking or speaking on video in college, or take a class in it, or take a seminar or something about presenting. It doesn't matter necessarily for video. There's just certain things you need to know about video, looking into a camera and staying in the shot, etc. But communicating is really the key, and feeling comfortable communicating and getting your point across is the main component of that. You don't want to just ramble on for 10 minutes like I'm doing.
Liz, you bring up a very good point. And taking that public speaking course in school and college. I'll even do a shout out for a Toastmasters.
Sure.
I mean, it's a great organization for anybody, any level, getting comfortable communicating, helping you crafting the story. We're all business professionals. We all have a story to tell about ourselves, our company, our product, our passion, whatever it is, and becoming comfortable communicating that story.
We talked about improvisation and acting and and speaking training and Toastmasters and all these things. Because we live in a world, if it's video, it's really not just video. It's oral communication. You're speaking, right?
Right.
You have to be able to clearly, you're doing a podcast or radio shows, people have to understand what you're saying. And then the visual of it adds to it. And then if you can layer another visual on top of what's called B-roll or other information, then that makes it much more powerful and engaging. And that keeps people wanting to lean in, or wanting to hear more, or wanting to see more, versus turning their camera off and typing some emails.
All right. So you just mentioned an important word as it relates to video conferencing, as it relates to video in general that we're going to promote on our social channels and platforms. Engaging the audience. So you and I have done plenty of public speaking events where we as professionals, we know how to engage our audience, but it's different when you see them and you can almost reach out and touch them if you're at an event. Now we don't have that, and you can have part of the audience that might go dark on you. So let's talk about this for a minute. Let's share with the listeners some really good ideas to engage the audience on the virtual platform.
Okay, so number one is one of the things I said already: be prepared. There should be an agenda. People should kind of expect what they're getting into. They should know how long the meeting is. They should know what's going to be covered. Whether it's a conference or whether it's an office meeting, right?
Right.
That they know that their attention span is going to be about an hour, a half hour, whatever it is. So what are they investing? That's one. Because if I know it's going to be a half hour, and I'm sure it's going to be a half hour, and not an hour, I can invest the time. That's one. Two is there should be rules of engagement, rules of participation. Like we said, the camera should stay on, mute your microphone. If you have a question, do X. That's two. Three, I would say I like to ask questions, even if it's just to see people raise their hand.
Mm-hmm.
And then I start. The cool thing about virtual meetings is you can, most of the time on Zoom, you can see the person's name, right? A lot of times you're at a meeting and you don't know the people, you don't know their name, but you can say,
Yeah.
hey, Tim Healy, hey, Bob Smith, hey, John, and specifically ask them questions. Or if they raise their hand, you can say, hey, Bob, what? So again, you can use people's names, you can call on individuals, you can ask questions, you can have them ask you questions, for either through the chat functionalities or, raise their hand and ask, unmute them, et cetera. It's hard. It's a little hard because you don't want multiple people, what they call stepping on each other and raising their hand,
Yeah.
where two people talking at the same time. So you have to regulate that. You can learn how to do that. So those are a couple of quickies, but I love asking questions and like at the beginning of a conversation, asking those questions to get people willing and able to be engaged in the conversation and active. And I try to do something like that myself every 5 or 10 minutes to just wake people up in case they're nodding off, which can happen a lot easier when you're in a nice comfortable chair at home. Yeah.
Oh, for sure. I mean, I had a conference. I was one of a few speakers for a client a while back, and what they did, it was 3 hours. And so listen to this, Bill. So I was one of 3, and it was rotating groups. Okay, so there's 3 speakers, and they had each group of people would see each presenter, and they didn't even accommodate for breaks in between. So by the 3rd session, and it just, and I'm a professional presenter, and I me, I got energy, I got myself pumped up, I'm ready to go. By the 3rd session, half of the screens went black.
Yeah.
And you can only mean, hey, yeah, like to see your face, and oh boy.
Yeah. So
it was rough.
Stylistically, you got to figure out, what works and what doesn't work. And so those are, some of those things, some of those fast-paced things do work. If you pop to different rooms and it's a shorter period of time. But I did one too, similar to that, where I had to do basically the same presentation about 6 times in a row to three people at a time. And it got a little bit, like repetitive, and I felt like a bit abused as a presenter. We could have, whatever, but it was, but you live and learn. We're in a new environment, so I'm cool with trying, different approaches that some work, some don't, some can be kind of work.
Right. No, listen, I learned myself as well, but it's hard when you do the same presentation multiple times. It just gets tough. So, the sales process, a lot of us during COVID used Zoom or the virtual meeting almost exclusively because we had no choice. Now that's opening up. I'm seeing some clients of mine. I like to get your take, where they're using it for prospecting, kind of saving time. And then when we get closer to like maybe a presentation or the close, then we're going face to face. What are you seeing out there with some clients or some associates of yours as far as how they're incorporating virtual into the selling process?
Yeah, I agree. I think people now, the sellee, the person you're selling to, and the people who are trying to sell them something, are much more accustomed to this, process versus me flying to Kalamazoo to meet with somebody.
Right.
And it's a real long shot that I'm going to get that client, right? So it's much more cost effective to do something like this. Have 1 or 2 preliminary meetings, and do it 10 or 15, 20 minutes. And really high level. And so, yes, I've definitely seen that, both because of COVID restrictions as well as just efficiencies. I think, we talk about efficiencies and, like in conferences and events and things like that. And I think that there's going to be some conferences that people love to go to because there's no way to get a better interaction than both in the conference room, in the exhibit hall, as well as at the bar or the restaurant that night, having dinner with people to talk about what you do and products and services. So I do believe there'll be hybridization in some of these activities. And you're right, some of it will live on in the virtual world. But I do feel that it's a lot of people are wanting to get back into the real world environment, maybe because they're tired of the other, or maybe it's just it's going to like an ebb and flow. It's going to go one, we're all virtual. Now they're going to ebb back a lot into in person, and then we'll find that kind of happy medium, in the middle, especially for certain events that you feel that you may or may not get the most value out of it. But the ones that are the high value ones, like a CES or some of these big conferences in industries, that people are going to go to them because you have to go to them, because that's how you make a sale, or how you meet the people that will eventually facilitate the sale. And I just give you one point. But before all these events can really open up, everyone has to feel safe going to them, right? They have to feel safe if they're going to be in a place with 500 people. Although we watched the Islander game last night, here in New York, and they won. It looked like they were about 80% capacity.
Okay.
The Coliseum. So I think people are, especially vaccinated folks, are pretty comfortable going back to events. But right now, research shows that about 30% of people in the United States are never going to get vaccinated. So that's a third of the population is never going to get vaccinated.
Mm-hmm.
So, what's that balance? And I could talk about technology that can help open some of these events up and things like that clients of mine are doing. But the fact of the matter is that people have to feel comfortable. So that I think because of that, there's always going to be a need to have some of this hybridization of events.
Yeah, I don't think it will go away. I mean, certainly not in the near future. Who knows what's going to happen 10 years from now? But in the next couple of years, it'll definitely be a part of it.
Well, I mean, I think with virtual reality and some of this stuff where you can actually have it, and you can almost walk into a conference room or into a exhibit hall that's a virtual exhibit hall or augmented reality, and you can walk in and say, and literally walk into a booth and talk to the person who's like in that booth when it's almost real or almost holographic in a sense. That might be very interesting in the next couple of years. We're going to see that. Right now, the virtual trade show is evolving, and people can walk around with FaceTime on their, they could have one person go and bring FaceTime with them and talk to people. But how cool would it be if you just said, okay, we have staff that's going to be in this booth. Put your VR headset in, you can walk into this, you pay a fee to have access to it, and you can interact with these people, depending on what they're selling and what they're doing, or just talk to them in a kind of, virtual reality world, kind of like the holodeck you used to have on Star Trek.
I don't know if I'm ready for that. You're probably right that it's coming. Although I attended a trade show, that I'll use that word loosely, some virtual trade show. It was brutal. It was absolutely brutal. So I know the technology will catch up. There'll be more interactive technology, but it was so one dimensional. I mean, listen, they did the best they could. They punted, but whatever. So getting back to in person is long overdue. And then there's, like you said, the whole issue of people being comfortable, and that'll flesh itself out. Do you have any tips though for hosts with shiny heads? I've done my best at lighting. It's not so bad. What do you think? It's not this. Is it distracting? Let me ask you.
Well, I think a hat works really well.
Is that what?
No. You can you can get powder. You can get you talk to the television makeup artist. There's powder that can be
maybe I should
that can be applied that you can't even tell it's there. A lot I've had some TV people that I've worked with over the years. They have a little kit that they bring with them just to on those surfaces to
right
to just, I say blunt it, but really mute any shininess. Yeah. And if you're a person who sweats a little bit, and I've had plenty of them do TV, under these lights that are very hot, you have to prep them for that, and whether you need to have a tissues or whatever, because it's it can ruin an appearance if you're too if you look the part, or you're sweating, and you remember the Nixon debate with Kennedy. Everyone who heard it on the radio thought Nixon had won, but everyone who saw it, so I'm sweating and really out of place.
That's right.
And, but that comes down to preparation. It comes down to practice, and it comes and doing this several times, because you'll know if you're a person who gets nervous before they go on video or something, or speaking even, that if you know you do this, then you have to do whatever you can to help alleviate that. Granted, if you're a person who perspires and you're in a hot conference room and the air conditioning is broken, well, you're stuck. But
Right.
if you know your body, you know how these things will that happen to you, then dress in lighter clothes, don't wear tight clothes, whatever. There's a lot of different strategies.
Anticipate it. Right.
Yeah, that are that, or work with the host of the show or the event, or even your own home to make sure you have ample air conditioning and things like that that allow you to present well. And I would do want to say that your microphone is almost more important than your camera, because when people can't hear you or they don't hear you clearly or there's an issue there,
Yeah.
that shoots down the entire thing. You can have a smiling face, you can be a good-looking person like you, Tim, and
Yeah. Thanks.
but if they can't hear what you're saying and they don't understand what you're saying, if there's static or you're just not clear, then that's a whole nother problem. But that comes back to preparation and this thinking about what you are getting yourself into and being prepared for it. Like Boy Scouts, be prepared.
Yeah.
You always be prepared. I do a presentation. I think there's 13 different P words that we talk about in terms of preparing and being, really, really superb when doing your video or speaking to at events, because
audio is critical. You're absolutely right. If you have a great video, but your audio is crackly or it's whatever, it's not just not good. People will shut you off in a heartbeat.
And people should recognize the fact that, I don't have a super expensive camera. Maybe it's like $100 Logitech camera. I got some devices here. I got a Yeti microphone. I have a green screen behind me. I got a couple other doodads that I use for my presentations and things like that. But it's not a very big investment.
No,
it's not. And there's a difference between a cost or an expense and an investment. This is an investment in making sure that you look and sound great. And
well, yeah, we didn't even talk about the equipment, but it's very affordable. I mean, you could easily get some good equipment, maybe not the best, but some good equipment that can make you look good for a couple of $100, safe to say.
Oh yeah, couple $100. I mean, their video cameras like sold out when the pandemic hit because it was just.
Oh yeah, they had those kits, those podcaster kits. Yeah. They were off the shelves.
But a little bit of investment. You don't even a little bit of training or listening to something like this or just reading for it, looking at a couple of articles online. I have some tip sheets if anybody wants to. You can email me at you'll find my email at my website CorbettPR.com, and I'll happily send it to you. And I think it's
which is a great resource. Yep.
My goal is I want everybody to look great. I want everybody to present well. I want everyone to build their brand in the right way. I don't want people to just hurt themselves. If they spend a little bit of extra time just thinking about it and planning, they can look a lot better.
Okay.
A lot better.
Now, all right. Now you just brought up a great topic, Bill. You don't want, and again, you're in the business promoting and protecting brands, Corbett Public Relations, today's guest, also great sponsor of the show. So that's obviously your mission and your focus and what you do professionally. But you said, I don't want people to hurt themselves. And the reason that really struck a chord with me is sometimes we have to be honest with ourselves. And sometimes you have to take a really critical look at yourselves and say, how do I really look? How does this sound? What kind of an image am I portraying? And maybe, and I think we've seen this, with the pandemic. Oh, it looks great. It's fine. No, it's not. You and I have seen a lot of crap out there, let's face it. And I think it goes back to everything you've shared today, from something as basic as, hey, have a plan, trying to figure out, what are the logistics, the air conditioning, the lighting, the audio, the video, because it will hurt you if you look or sound like crap, or if the message isn't right, or if you're not passionate about it, or if you've got some controversial, stuff in the background because you're not paying attention to your audience. But that's a great point, Bill.
Years ago, we talked about LinkedIn, right? We talked about LinkedIn and just your picture on LinkedIn. Is it 20 years old? That's, whatever, your LinkedIn, you have spelling errors on your website. You want to present the best image possible. It's like you want to make the best first impression, because it's really hard to make to fix a bad first impression with a great second impression.
Right.
You never. A lot of times you'll never have a chance to make a second impression.
Right.
That even, I don't even know if that even exists. Right?
Rarely, yeah.
But we live in a very fast-paced world. But sometimes you just got to take a deep breath, step back, think for a minute, think about the purpose of what you're doing and how to do it well. And in many cases, you'll do much better. And then if you make a mistake, that's fine. Get up, brush yourself off. Just don't do it again.
Right.
Just do it again.
Right. Learn from it. Exactly. Let's try not repeat it. Bill, listen, this has been a great conversation. While we all know we're getting back to in-person events, which is fantastic, the reality is in a post-pandemic economy and a B2B environment, there is a hybrid model. And a big part of that hybrid model, Bill, that we've been talking about is going to be virtual conferencing and, of course, video, something you've been a champion of for many years. So it's a great conversation, great resource. And as you said, people can find more of your resources at CorbettPR.com. So thanks for sharing that, Bill.
Happy to do it. Take care, everybody, and have a great summer.
Thank you so much. And you are listening to The Profit Express, of course. And again, special thanks to our guest today, Bill Corbett, Corbett Public Relations. And it's all about best practices. It's all about not doing things that are going to hurt you and your brand. And of course, you can follow me and the show on Instagram at The Profit Express, on Twitter at Profit_Express, and The Profit Express page on Facebook. And get ready to listen and download to hot new episodes each and every Wednesday.